You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. So, Eta Act 2 is underway. The storm which regenerated in the Western Caribbean is now getting up there towards hurricane strength, 65 mile per hour winds right now from the latest National Hurricane Center advisory. Pressure of 991 about to make landfall, or will do fairly soon, in Cuba, and then moving on to the coast of Florida somewhere. We're not entirely sure just where yet. Latest scenario sort of takes it through the Keys, but, well, there's a lot of uncertainty regarding where the storm could go right now. National Hurricane Center's track takes it just along the Everglades coast and Florida Bay into the Gulf of Mexico, and then staying close to the western coast after that. Needless to say, this is our main feature tonight on the stream. As a matter of fact, there's not really anything else going on in the world of tropics. There are two areas of interest in the Western Pacific, but aren't named right now. That train continuing, or trying to. But the main source of the coverage tonight will be for Tropical Storm Eta Part 2, because of course during Part 1 it made Category 4 landfall in Central America, and now we didn't know for sure whether it would regenerate as the same name, but now it's here, Part 2, and that's not an official term, by the way, it's still just Eta. But anyway, let's introduce my team right now. My name is Nathan Foy. I'm joined by Christian, Codemo, and Gabe. Good evening to you all.
Good evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are.
Good evening.
Now,
good evening, everybody.
Good evening. Now, Christian, you did the last update on the Force 13 channel for this storm, so I imagine you're quite familiar with it. How has it changed since you put out that update?
Well, I can only draw comparisons between Update 2 and Update 5, which are the ones that I did, but Update 2...
Well, no, I mean since you did Update 5, because...
Update 5. It really hasn't changed all that much since then. That was only a few hours ago. So, apart from it moving slightly more towards the north, it really hasn't changed all that much.
It's blowing up fierce amounts of convection though right now. On the left-hand side and the southwestern side there, looks like it could be wind shear affected. I'm just checking in on the latest product, just what the wind shear is around the storm right now. I imagine this time of year, and looking at its appearance, that it is moderate at least. And yes, it's around 20 knots, and actually it could increase as it goes over Cuba and when it emerges off Cuba, so there's no guarantee that this is going to reach hurricane status at all. Hurricane watches are out in force. National Hurricane Center not actually predicting a hurricane yet, but there is obviously the chance that it could do that, and there is the latest cone on the right hand side of your screen, and all the warnings that are in effect there. Tropical storm warnings extending up to Lake Okeechobee, also for the Bahamas as well. Even though they're not in the cone, they could get tropical storm force winds. And large parts of central Cuba under the tropical storm warnings, with watches extending out towards the western tip. We'll be here for the hour to take any questions that you've got. Start your message with Force 13 all in text, and I'll throw them to the team. We got some already actually. Let's see if we can start here. Will Eta reach 70 miles per hour? Asks Maple Magic, and I assume the grammar of the question, before the Cuba landfall.
I think, before the Cuba landfall, there's a possibility. There's always a possibility with these kinds of systems. Uncertainty is always a possibility. However, the current models, especially from the NHC, suggest that's not going to happen. What are they predicting actually before?
Well, it's
Are they saying
65
something?
miles per hour right now. National Hurricane Center forecasting a landfall in a good 6 hours, I think it still is. So I think there's time for it to reach 70. Could even pull a surprise and get to 75 if it's really got it going. But at the moment, I wouldn't say that's going to happen.
70 mile per hour, probably not likely that it'll strengthen anymore. Right now, dry air and shear is a big inhibitor for the storm. But I do think there is the possibility, even if it's very small, that it could reach 70 miles per hour after the Cuban landfall.
Oh no, I think
That
that's more
possibility
likely
is
than
there.
not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's your more likely 70 mile per hour chance, as opposed to before or after the Cuba landfall.
Now, I'm looking at the latest water vapor imagery there, and that's one of the best indications of a storm structure, but even so, the convection blowing up enormously that you can't really see underneath it. Recon are around the storm, aren't they?
Yes, Recon's
Alright,
currently making its passes through the storm. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just saying yes, they are. Let's just see what they've got so far.
I must say that with all this convection and high cloud tops pushing into Cuba, you can expect to see a lot of high rainfall totals.
Still, it's been a
Still.
trend with this storm the whole time.
You can definitely expect some flash flooding across the many parts of Cuba, the Bahamas, and Florida as the storm slowly moves through those areas. So definitely watch out for that.
Now, the National Hurricane Center, before it reached the Cayman Islands, was suggesting that isolated rainfall amounts could be up to 35 inches, I think, or 30 at least. Do we know anything about 30 it was. Do we know anything about what's actually transpired there? Have they had as much rain as expected?
I do not know that.
I do not know either.
No one knows that. Well, we'll get you guys on the case and see if you could tell us pretty soon. What are our predicted impacts for Cuba and the Bahamas, and which settlements in either of these countries will be most affected? Well, casting our eyes back to the National Hurricane Center map there. So you're looking at Cuba, and I'm a bit rusty on Cuba, I've got to say. We've got to know geography of pretty much the whole world in these tropical zones.
Yeah.
But right now it's affecting the city that would be most affected would be Sancti Spiritus, I think, which will experience tropical storm force winds. Not a huge amount of populated areas in Cuba are underneath the likely tropical storm force conditions, but then you move up, you look at that wind speed probability graphic on the left hand side into Florida there. You're getting into higher chances, actually 50% now for Miami.
50%.
Which is about right. And a question in relation to that: should I put up storm shutters in Miami? That's a decent question. There's a chance that you could get strong gusty winds of above 60 miles per hour, which are potentially destructive. So certainly if you're playing it safe, you'd want to do that. Hurricane force can't be ruled out, but at the moment doesn't look particularly likely. I'd have them on hand if necessary. Is there still dry air to the west of Eta? Probably. When I was looking at the imagery just before, I think there is, yes. Could this be a Category 1 landfall before Cuba? Time's running out on that. Why does the National Hurricane Center issue hurricane watches when it isn't forecast to be one? Well, this is the thing. You've got to put into perspective the National Hurricane Center have a bit of a tough job. Even if they think that it will become a hurricane at some point, but they don't know exactly when, they wouldn't be able to forecast a hurricane because the confidence at any particular time interval isn't high enough, even though the cumulative confidence is higher. So they're probably at least half confident that it will be a hurricane at some point, or at least make a run for it, but they don't know when and where. So that's why they've issued hurricane watches for quite a large area.
Right.
Is there a chance that this completely weakens over Cuba? That would be nice, wouldn't it? Unfortunately, it's one of the narrowest parts of Cuba. I mean, Cuba's narrow in general, and it's a perpendicular track, pretty much. So it's going to clear Cuba in almost record time, 6 hours or so. So my guess is that it will only weaken this storm by about 10 or 15 miles per hour. If it's more than that, then we're lucky.
Oh, yeah, that would be
Yes.
very nice.
That would be nice, wouldn't it? Especially as Nathan just said, as quickly as the storm is going to be passing through Cuba, normally you need a storm to stall over land for quite a while before it really gets to the storm. And hopefully dry air and shear will also do their parts and weakening the storm before it emerges off the northern coast of Cuba, and
Yeah,
hopefully
do
we won't be
watch-
seeing the storm as strong.
Do watch that wind shear closely, because you never know, over land it might just completely overrun the storm. We can hope. Let's see what else we've got. Chances of the area of interest near the Azores becoming theta, or theta. Well, let's take a look at the wide Atlantic picture, if we can. This is what it looks like right now, somewhere. There it is. So,
wow.
Eta's influence rather large, actually. The eastern side of it there extending way over Hispaniola. Its northern influence over Florida now, if you're seeing cloudiness there, right the way up to central Florida. That's to do with Eta and actually some of its very peripheral bands making it to Jacksonville and maybe beyond by now. But obviously the storm itself, you're not feeling it yet. So you look further east, there is a little area there, non-tropical frontal, which might be the area that they're talking about. I'm not sure. I haven't looked in depth at this yet, but essentially in the next 5 days there's one and possibly two systems that could develop into short-lived cyclones. One of them will be heading off towards the eastern Atlantic, sort of continuing that direction eastwards from where that front is, and the other one could be something that spins up, maybe subtropical, near the Azores, and actually the latest GFS guidance suggesting that it will go near Madeira and then into Iberia. So could we possibly have two Iberian landfalls in the same season?
I hope.
That'd be insane. Isn't the one in the Central Atlantic getting a 20% chance for the NHE in the next 5 days?
Last I saw, I think it was 20%. I'm not sure if that's still the case.
I just checked. Yeah, still 20%.
20%, and they've drawn a polygon that's over a large area up towards the Azores and Madeira in that area. So I think they're factoring in the potential for models are toing and froing really between one or two systems, or one system that does completely different to what the other scenario of the system does. So they've marked a large area, which is basically the zone where something will probably happen in the next 5 days.
Right.
Unfortunately, I
would
don't have
be-
that graphic for you, but I can tell you it's up towards the Azores.
If that system did develop into a subtropical system and affect the Iberian Peninsula as a tropical storm, that would be record-breaking activity right there.
I mean,
There's
For,
ever
for,
been
for
any-
that for that peninsula, well, I must point out, and this is disputed and not official, but we have taken a look back at the 1997 season, and there is a case for potentially two subtropical cyclones that struck the Iberian Peninsula that fall. but that's
that
something
so?
else. It might be crazy that it happened in that year, which was dead quiet. Let's see now. What are the odds that Eta makes landfall in Florida as a Category 1? Well, considering that sea surface temperatures are probably still fairly warm there, I've not checked the actual temperatures recently, but I know from previous updates that it's been around 27 degrees Celsius, so plenty enough for a hurricane. The biggest potential threat would be the wind shear, and let's just check that water vapor again. Yeah, look at that, large amounts of dry air on the western side denoted by those yellows, oranges. The moisture plume from the storm is obviously the green, and that extends way east of it. So it's the western side that is where the weakness is. And again, you can see it there. Shear impacts, dry air impacts. But it's making a good run. It is intensifying at this point.
Right.
I have to the system. I mean, its eastern side is looking very well defined. Well, not defined, very well. Like quite a lot of convection going on over there.
It is, and some high cloud tops in there as well, which has been a feature of this hurricane season, it would seem.
No kidding.
As I said, go ahead.
More questions I just wanted to get on to, because this is very much a Q&A session, I suppose, as well as any information that we can bring. Where in Florida will the most severe impacts be experienced, and what are the best, most expected, and worst case scenarios for Eta before and after its Cuban landfall? There's a lot crammed into that question. So, unfortunately, we can't give you detailed information. Anyone that claims they can is gambling on it, because the uncertainty is significant, especially as you get towards day 5, because you look at the chart there from the National Hurricane Center. If it follows the projected path, then the worst conditions would be felt in the upper Florida Keys, the Everglades probably, southern towards the I hesitate to say coast, because it sort of is already coastal, but along the western coast of Florida, worst case scenario, yes, you could see a Category 1 hurricane riding up the western coast of Florida in a worst case. That's the most expected scenario, what I just explained at the beginning there, that it will go through the upper Keys and then into the Gulf of Mexico, a little bit offshore as you can see, but certainly not out of the question that it could go along the coast. Whether it will go along the eastern coast of Florida, that is almost able to be ruled out, but we can't quite do it at this stage, nearly. And the chances it doesn't hit Florida at all, I would say, are actually quite low. This storm is going to Florida.
Right.
Which, for some reason, basically hasn't happened this season besides Sally as a depression.
Despite this crazy season, we have not seen a Florida landfall. It's incredible.
That really is incredible.
Well, looks like up until now.
Up until now, do we know what the heaviest rainfall total was from Ada whilst it was in Central America? I know that it was projecting in excess of 36 inches.
Yeah, as far as I heard, it was forecast to be about 900 millimeters, which is a lot. That's almost a meter's worth of rain.
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure of the exact amounts, what did happen, but all I know is, again, almost a meter was forecast.
Incredible amount. We know that there's been issues.
Yeah.
I was just distracted then by the bar malfunctioning, but there have been some, obviously we've seen it, pictures, and it's not been a good situation down there in Nicaragua and Honduras.
Obviously, lots of flooding issues from Central America from the storm stalling.
We saw this
for the
coming,
past couple
unfortunately.
days.
I mean, you just know that if it's going to deliver that amount of rainfall over that area, that, you know, places that have been affected by weak storms, you know, can cause dreadful impacts. And this was a Category 4 landfall a few days ago, hard to believe, but that did indeed happen, and this is now getting up towards hurricane status again. Several major models have been predicting for another significant tropical cyclone to form in the Caribbean within the next couple of weeks. And our thoughts on that. I did see that for the first time within the 7-day period in the Caribbean Sea. Watch this space. I can't really say much more than that without speculating too much. But watch that space there in the central Caribbean Sea next week. Will this impact Georgia? Well,
It doesn't.
eventually.
Well, yeah, right now, like in the near future, it doesn't look like that's a real possibility. However, when it's recurving, models are really like kind of split on it. It looks like there's a chance it might make impacts over there, but yeah.
Okay, I think we've got Christian. Are you looking at recon right now?
Not at the minute, but
What's that?
ah,
There's an image that you posted not so long ago.
oh yeah. Has that updated? That has updated since then.
Oh, we can't show it at the moment. We'll get fixed. Stay at a black screen for just one moment here whilst we get everything running. There we go. Well, that's an image that you had up earlier. Let's just wait for you to get the newer one.
Hang on it. Copy image.
All right, we'll get to that shortly.
There we go.
How much rainfall could Florida experience from Eta? Well, let me just get to, whilst we take a look at that recon image. There it is. So I'll let Christian discuss that in a moment. But the latest from the National Hurricane Center, the Cayman Islands discontinued their tropical storm warning. That was at the top of this hour. Storm surge watch in effect for the Florida coast from Golden Beach to Bonita Beach, including Biscayne Bay. The Florida Keys from Ocean Reef to the Dry Tortugas, including Florida Bay. Hurricane watch for the Florida coast from Deerfield Beach to Bonita Beach and the Florida Keys, same areas again. Tropical storm warning for parts of central Cuba, the northwestern Bahamas, the Florida coast from Jupiter Inlet to Bonita Beach, including Florida Bay. The Florida Keys from Ocean Reef to the Dry Tortugas and Lake Okeechobee. A tropical storm watch for western Cuba, the Florida coast from north of Jupiter Beach to the Brevard-Volusia County line, and the Florida coast from north of Bonita Beach to Englewood. Now, regarding rainfall, they're expecting in Jamaica an additional 2 to 4 inches, isolated maximums of 15 in total. The Cayman Islands, into portions of Cuba, an additional 5 to 10 inches, isolated maximum storm totals of 25 inches. The Bahamas and portions of the central and southern Florida peninsula, including the Keys, 6 to 12 inches there. Isolated maximums of 18 could happen. Significant life-threatening flash and river flooding will be possible in Cuba, along with landslides in areas of higher terrain. Flash and urban flooding will also be possible for the Cayman Islands, Jamaica, Bahamas, southern Florida. Isolated minor river flooding also possible for central Florida. Then you've got the storm surge, which could raise water levels by as much as 2 to 4 feet above normal tide levels along the coast of Cuba, near and to the east of where the center makes landfall. Near the coast, the surge will be accompanied by large and destructive waves. And then for Florida, we're looking from Bonita Beach to Golden Beach, 2 to 4 feet. Florida Keys, 2 to 4 feet. Flagler-Volusia County line to Altamaha Sound, 2 to 3 feet. Golden Beach to Flagler-Volusia County line, 1 to 2 feet. And then, of course, you've got the wind impacts as well. Okay, Christian, what are we looking at?
For what I'm seeing here is I'm gonna need help with this because I'm not sure I'd be able to describe the whole thing.
Recon have been in and around the storm by the looks of things there, and at flight level have been getting, I'm trying to see that, near hurricane force.
Near hurricane force, yeah.
Yeah, so let me bring up this these observation graphs. Where are we?
Oh yes, I'm seeing that as well, just for everyone's perspective here. This is what some observations from Recon in the last couple of hours. And you can see the flight level wind there. They did briefly get hurricane flight level peak wind speeds. That obviously doesn't correlate to a hurricane on the ground.
This is more higher up.
pressures there in the lower 990s, well, just below 995. We've got it listed at 992. National Hurricane Center went to 991. Or I should say, we had it listed at 992 until the National Hurricane Center's update, and now it is 991. So I think we did a good call on that one. And SFMRs there, we're looking at, let's see, the winds on that getting up towards 55 knots, so 65 miles an hour seems to be a decent call.
Yeah, and that I believe the NHC are running with.
That to me would also suggest that this won't anymore reach hurricane strength before landfall, I don't think. I think it'll stay as it's suggesting to me that it's just not really, it's not strengthening very quickly. That's obviously good news. But the core of the storm already about to move ashore, so it would seem here that we won't have a hurricane landfall for Cuba. There is still the potential that it will re-strengthen as it heads towards Florida, and can't rule out a hurricane there, though it would be probably only a Category 1. I hesitate to say only, obviously, because at the Saffir-Simpson hurricane scale, I know a lot of people are very used to it, but it doesn't really convey rainfall impacts and storm surge impacts.
It's just a wind thing, isn't it?
Yeah. So on that topic, what is the CDPS currently looking for Eta?
That's a really good question. It'd be nice if Devon was here talking to us about it.
I can let's find out. I can probably try and get Devon.
What did you run with earlier, Christian?
What did I run with earlier in my storm update? Oh, you know what? I can barely remember off the top of my head. Let me.
It's been a day like that, has it?
Yeah.
I think you put it as a 5.
A stage
if I
5.
remember correctly.
That sounds about right with the heavy rainfall.
Yeah, I was. Oh yeah, if you're talking about CDPS, that was a stage 5.
So that
Let me
is.
see-
So
And,
that is into the devastating category, stage 5 in that 10-tiered scale. It could be a very serious rain impact and surge impact.
Alright, if I get the actual video update itself, I can actually go over what I put down the CDPS at. Aha, here we go. So, we've got a wind speed of just over moderate, storm size of also just over moderate, rainfall potential is just under major.
In relative terms, that is.
Yep, and the overall threat to land is just under significant. So, again, CDPS stage 5 means that I've got the buzzword here is devastating.
Yes.
So, yeah. So
On the CDPS scale.
yeah. So again, devastating damage is possible for Cuba, and they really should have prepared.
And I imagine Florida might have stage 4.
Well, if it doesn't strengthen, I would imagine a stage.
We'll see what happens. Naturally, with this landfall, I would imagine that the wind field will increase.
Yeah, which it probably will.
We've had a lot more questions, so let's take the next batch here. Does it look like Eta's LLC is becoming exposed now? It's low-level circulation. I did have a little look at that. You can see on the visible imagery, you can see some parts of it there, the western, southwestern side. Maybe partially exposed, but it's close. I think it might be a bit of a trick. I think, personally, I would still side with no.
I don't think so. I mean, obviously that burst of convection is aiding that the LLC thing into the storm, preventing exposure. So probably not.
Do we think Louisiana will get hit again this year? Well, hopefully it's not this one, and I think, I must say it would be incredibly bad luck if Louisiana got another system this year, because it's not supposed to happen at this date.
Well,
I mean, it's broken the record for most landfalls in Louisiana in one season, so let's hope that it doesn't continue to raise that number.
so
But we can't say.
to answer that question, it could, but we definitely hope it doesn't. Of course.
Yeah,
It is
could-
extremely, extremely unlikely.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, with this system at least, after it hits Florida once, it will start curving back again towards the northeast and hit Florida again. I hope.
Chances of rapid intensification, well, we've put them very low, really. It doesn't seem to me like this storm is going to rapidly intensify, at least close to land. I do realise that the latest GFS run points out that the storm will get to 969 millibars out in the Gulf, and then move southwest and make a landfall on the tip of the Yucatan, probably as a Category 1. So there is that eventuality, but that shouldn't be a threat to the Gulf Coast. But again,
Right.
the Yucatan could get impacted there. This time of year, you get very strange steering currents. I believe we're now also joined by David.
I am here, and hi to the viewers. Just picking up on the National Hurricane Centre's advisory. Sorry for the viewers, I've got...
You've got yourself in the background, David. That's a
Yes, I know, I tried to...
elementary. Oh dear. Let's get
Right.
some more questions whilst David's fixing his audio there. Is there, so will Eta be reanalyzed to a Category 5? I personally don't think so. There's a few people within our team that think it has a chance.
Yeah.
People.
The NHC is very, like, they don't usually up an entire, like, category very often. It happened with Michael, but we as the 413
They
team
certainly can do.
expected them to do that because it was, like, very much close. Eta, I don't think they will, because they have it as a 150, I think, max right now, and upping it about more than, like, or, like, about 10 miles per hour isn't, I don't think they will. Maybe, like, up to 155 is possible, but
All right.
I don't know.
Well,
Yes.
well, to answer that question, typically the NHC don't make a call without overwhelming conclusive evidence. So there isn't too much conclusive evidence. There's almost no conclusive evidence of Category 5 status in Eta. Only speculation and a bit of a gray area that can be explored.
It is a grey area.
So,
Yeah.
due to that, there's a pretty high chance that it will not be upgraded due to the uncertainty, and they will probably go with the estimates they found. So you're probably looking at no higher than 155 miles per hour.
David, shall we try again with you now?
Yeah, it's not very often it happens. The intensity forecast is tricky. Strong upper level divergence caused by the tropics allowing the cyclone to strengthen. However, at some time in the next 24 to 48 hours, the wind shear and dry air entrainment should prevent any further strengthening. The intensity guidance shows a little intensification during the next 36 hours, with the bulk of the guidance peaking near 60 knots. After that time, the dry air should cause at least some weakening, and the new intensity forecast is increased a bit from the previous forecast to show 60 knot intensity at 24 and 36 hours. So this requires issuing a hurricane watch for the Florida Keys and portions of South Florida. So the NHC is saying, hey, the intensity is turning out to be extremely tricky. But it's the key messages that people have to continue to monitor. Heavy rainfall, the Grand...
That's a
the
given. I mean,
Cayman
that's going to be the biggest thing for most people viewing.
Yes, Cuba, Jamaica, and I checked a couple of hours ago what the weather people were saying down there in the Cayman, and the heavy rain should track away from the area overnight. But Cuba, Jamaica. But Nathan, when Eta was down there, Honduras, it was the rainfall factor, and the rainfall factor for the Cayman Islands, Cuba, and Jamaica has been known since, well, over a week now.
When a storm starts off like that, the energy that it's got, the rainfall amounts, they continue to hike. This is a much wetter than usual storm. I'm going to take some more questions if I may. Can Miami get 80 mile per hour gusts? Possible right now, but we won't know for a little while yet. This storm could capitulate over Cuba if wind shear and dry air has an excellent sense of timing. But if it doesn't, then you could be looking at potential hurricane gusts or even sustained winds at a worst case. Why do subtropical hurricanes not exist? Well, I actually can tell you that there have been a few subtropical cyclones with hurricane force winds. I think there's 4 examples, or maybe 3. One in the Atlantic, I think it was 1978 or 79 or something like that. Joel in the southern hemisphere in 2010, I think. And there was one in 2003 somewhere. I'm a bit rusty on that.
Don't forget about the one in the lake.
Well, maybe not. Maybe not. People talking about the GFS parallel model now, which has come out recently, and let's see what it's going for. Some people thinking that it's going to be... Oh no, they're not talking about this. They're talking... Okay. GFS parallel has the next system becoming a major hurricane in the very long range period. Wouldn't bet anything on it yet, but it just wouldn't surprise me to see something like that. But at the moment, that's just something to be amused about, because we can't forecast something like that when it's 2 weeks out. Well, 10 days actually. Or am I looking at the wrong one? No, I think I was looking at the right one. Yeah, so... Yep, it's there alright. That's actually a very old model. I was wondering whether it was the right time, because I was looking at... The newest one I can see here is from 2 days ago, so... I wouldn't bother with the GFS parallel, to be honest with you. Let's see what we have here. Just looking for more questions, and we've gone hopelessly far behind in the comments section. So whilst I look for some more, I'll have an open floor here. Go ahead. Or perhaps not.
Well, just switching away from the main topic, it's been reported that the recent hail in to the west of my location, 13 and 14 centimetre in size, could be a Australian record.
That's crazy.
So that is crazy, but I'm enjoying some rain. Mackay is getting some decent falls, but we're off to a slow cyclone season down under.
Well, not really. It's not even getting going just yet. It'll get going. Let me just reiterate for new people joining the latest situation on Tropical Storm Eta right now. National Hurricane Center put it up to 65 mile per hour winds, up from 60 miles per hour before the advisory from 4 p.m. 4 p.m? 7 p.m. And we expect that maybe just a tiny bit more strengthening before landfall in Cuba, but it's coming up pretty close. The storm could fall apart over Cuba, unlikely at this stage, but you never know. Hurricane watches are in effect. Looking back at the National Hurricane Center forecast map, tropical storm warnings and hurricane watches for a large chunk of southern Florida, and tropical storm watches extending further north as well, more on the east coast than the west at the moment, actually. And right now, Cuba, of course, large parts of central Cuba there under the tropical storm warning, and western Cuba under the watch. You can see towards the end of the 5-day period that the track is very uncertain. Don't follow the dots per se. You're following the cone because models suggesting that by day 5 it might even do a loop-the-loop and then go southwest towards the southwestern peripheral of that cone on day 5. Or it could go a bit faster than expected and go and strike the Florida Panhandle.
Nathan, I just want to pick up on your comment about loop to loop. I'm flat out trying to keep up with what's happening down here in the New Zealand region with some of these models showing the Fujiwara effect and going around in circles.
There
and
were
all
one or
that.
two subtropical little things that we were looking for down there, but it hasn't materialized. David's desperate to find some activity down at his neck of the woods.
I'm watching all the activity to the south of Australia, across the New
Yes.
Zealand, down to the ice shelf.
Indeed.
The low pressure and the highs, viewers. If you want to see the high pressure,
Come
just have
here.
a look.
We've had high
Yeah, well,
pressure recently. Let's just get on some more questions though. What about the disturbance? I assume you're talking about disturbance in the Atlantic that the National Hurricane Center have marked as 20%. So it could develop from that system there, that what appears to be a frontal system in the central Atlantic. Let me just double check on that, whether it will actually come from that system or not. Yes, it would. The northern part of it will eventually become a more, I suppose, clear and broad low pressure area, and something out of that could develop into a tropical or subtropical cyclone, but we've got low chances on that right now.
And Nathan, I would like to ask about 92W and 93W.
Well, let's just do a little tour around the world. Here's the eastern Pacific right now. A lot of convection down there near the equatorial regions, but nothing really here. I think the East Pac is shut now for the season. The western Pacific, there are two areas, if you're watching from there right now. A tropical disturbance that's just moved through the central northern Philippine Islands, now entering the South China Sea, and could develop into a tropical storm before striking southern Vietnam. And there's another area there near Palau that could develop into a tropical cyclone, and actually one or two models suggesting it could become a significant typhoon landfall in the Philippines next week. Again.
Another one.
More
Cayman
questions.
had
Was
another-
Ada's eye smaller than Wilma's? No. Nope.
No, definitely.
Nowhere near. Wilma
no-
had a ludicrously tiny eye.
It was insane.
It was really small, yeah.
What conditions are Cuba and the Bahamas currently experiencing from Ada? Well, looking at the satellite imagery there, I'm just going to get for my personal reference a better, or not necessarily, but a perspective that shows satellite estimates of how much rain is falling. You won't be able to see this, but I can tell you that a broad area underneath the dark colours there, the dark red into the blacks, into the greys, are looking at a minimum of 10 millimeters of rain per hour. It's moving fairly quickly, this storm. It's an average pace. Near the center of the storm, though, the rain rate is in excess of 60 millimeters per hour underneath the highest cloud tops. So if that reaches land soon, then that's a lot of rainfall. But anywhere that gets underneath that convective dome, and let's just say that it takes 12 hours for that dome to clear the central part of Cuba there, that's 12 times 10, which is 120 millimeters of rain minimum. That's before you get to the bigger parts of the storm once the center passes over, that inflates the rain rate like a big spike. But you're talking widespread, several inches of rain.
Nathan, have you got a water vapor imagery?
Yeah,
And-
we've had that up a few times on our stream.
Yeah.
We've lost it again now. There it is.
Yeah, I'm looking at the screen. I'm just wondering whether it might be trying to form an eye, or this one's a little bit better.
No signs of an eye, it's the cloud tops. That's not
So
to
what,
say not to say that there's not an eye underneath that, which there might be.
So what would you give the cloud tops temperature rise?
Those cloud top temperatures right now are just about into the minus 80s. So fairly impressive. But structure-wise, you know, it's still in this phase where there's no real eyewall structure on the satellite. I don't know whether microwave imagery's captured anything recently. Do we know?
When did this system come on the radar?
A long
First.
time ago now, David.
Yeah.
Quite a while.
And we
I'm not privy to that. It every day feels like a millennium at the moment. Just checking microwave image. The last one was from a good 6 hours ago now, I'm afraid. So it was trying to form an eye wall at that point. Certainly conceivable that it might have one now.
Yeah, I remember in my storm update video, I think I touched on the fact that the storm was trying to form an eye. Again, that was a few hours ago.
A few hours ago, it did have a northern eye wall, and indeed on microwave was showing
Yep.
signs of an eye. But who knows? Maybe shear and dry air have gotten to the system and maybe have disrupted chances of that happening. What I can tell you about the imagery, for some viewers, about the eye, if there is an eye forming on visible, sometimes you just see some cloud tops that are a bit warmer in the center, just happen to be in the center of that big blob of convection, and it may look like an eye, but usually, like right now, you're probably not looking at an eye, you're probably just looking at some warmer cloud tops surrounded by cooler ones.
That happens especially when the hot towers blow up, as we've just seen.
Yes.
I mean, you can see a
Yeah.
tiny depression inside what you would imagine might be the eye, but that's just a couple of degrees difference. It's nothing at this stage. At what point does the National Hurricane Center define a storm as subtropical? Does location play a big factor? To an extent. Obviously, a subtropical storm can be in any location apart from the tropics, usually. And it's halfway really between fully tropical with the massive bursts of convection and enormous rain rates, and the extratropical cyclones, which are extremely broad and asymmetric and much wider scope of wind and rain, but less severe usually.
Right.
And Nathan, just picking up on that, what about the hot and cold core?
Yes,
Would it
and
have to
it's not such a warm core either. It's sometimes it can be slightly warm core, or a cold core could become a subtropical cyclone. It depends exactly where the origins of the development. You can get some that come from frontal systems, some that happen through baroclinicity in the central North Atlantic, or some that form towards the end of a season in lower latitudes. It's very diverse. chances that this makes landfall in Florida as a Category 1, and they say a weak Category 1, but I don't think there's such a thing. And this, you know, again, I hark on about it, but for this storm in particular, delivering huge amounts of rainfall, maybe up to 18 inches in Florida, the Saffir-Simpson scale doesn't weigh that in. This storm could cause pretty bad flooding, especially if the center of it tracks over your place. And especially with that uncertain track forecast, because if this storm slows down and maybe stalls, then the western coast of Florida is going to be in for an enormous amount of rain.
And Nathan, draw your attention to the latest from Bagasa.
What are they saying?
Tropical Depression Tonyo, T-O-M-Y-O. They've named it.
Well, there's some news out from the Western Pacific. Bagasa have named one of these systems, and I'm trying to find out which one it is.
That's interesting.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Now that it would have to be the one closer to the Philippines, which would make it, I think, 92. I think it's 92 W.
So we're trying to keep on top of everything that's going on around the world all the time, and indeed, Tropical Depression Tonyo has formed, and that is the one that's in the central part of the Philippines right now. And they have Signal 1 warnings in effect for a few areas, significant parts of central Luzon, including Manila, northern Mindoro, northern Romblon, and Marinduque as well, all under Signal 1, which is the lowest of the 5-tiered signal system in the Philippines. So that's something that we definitely should give a mention to during this hour, but still at this point we are mostly on Tropical Storm Eta, which is about to make landfall in Cuba as a strong tropical storm. Doesn't look like it will get to hurricane status on this side of Cuba, but it still might have a chance on the other side. We've only got a few more minutes to run here, but start your question with Force 13 all in text in our chat section on YouTube, and you can and we'll be able to reply to those. You can also check out our social platforms and join our Discord server to communicate with people in real time, discord.gg/Force13. So again, with the forecast of this storm, the National Hurricane Center are expecting that it will be a fairly strong tropical storm throughout. Just getting up the forecast advisory, I haven't seen it recently, so they expect it to get near hurricane status once it emerges over water actually. That, you know what, they don't actually anticipate weakening over Cuba at all, which is very interesting. They anticipate weakening will begin as it's reaching Florida by just after it passes the Keys. And then the weakening trend continues, probably because of the storm's slow movement. Upwelling, much more easier to do at this time of year. Sea surface temperature is only marginal. So what you might see is an increase in the wind field distribution quite significantly. And I tell you what, you've seen some late season storms in the Gulf of Mexico. If shear isn't an enormous issue, could be, but if it isn't in the long term, this could get pretty large in the Gulf. There was 1985, I think it was Juan, which was enormous in the Gulf of Mexico, late season. Either that or Kate. But that's the forecast projection anyway. Tropical storm force winds extend out further towards the southeast than any other quadrant, and hurricane watch is in effect for a larger part of southern Florida because they don't really know whether it will become a hurricane or not. They're hedging it really that it might, and they don't know exactly at which point it will do so. So that's why they're not forecasting a hurricane generally. But they certainly can't rule that out, and that's why there's a hurricane watch in effect. And when it You know, if it's nearly a hurricane 65, 70 miles per hour on the other side of Cuba, they'll probably turn that into a hurricane warning. We've got some more questions here. Those latest infrared frames look like a formative eye, is a comment that we've received. Let's have another look. This is one version. Not showing up much on there. That imagery is a little bit older, so let's try and get just the very, very latest rapid scan. I still think it's cloud tops, but it is an interesting development. If that trend continues, I might be inclined to change my mind, but what's making me think that it's not an eye there is because I'm not seeing a rotational pattern really in that.
Right. Typically, whenever you're looking at eyes trying to form tropical cyclones, you get your convection burst curling around these warmer cloud tops in the center like you're seeing right now. But as Nathan said, we're not really seeing that here, so you're probably not looking at an eye just yet.
Have we got any more news on the recon right now?
Not as far as I've taken a look.
Were they heading back? Because it looked like they were moving over Cuba and headed back to Florida.
Yeah, I think they are.
They've returned to base, okay.
Yeah, well, they're returning as far as I've seen. I think, I don't know, the status on Tropical Tidbit still says in progress. I don't know.
Well, yes, it's still in progress until they land, but effectively it's finished.
Yeah.
So that's the current status. Is that 969 millibar hurricane the 18 ZGFS showing possible? They think no, says Contact 20. This time of year can be awful funny sometimes. Can't rule it out. Really can't rule that out.
Yeah, who knows,
somewhat unlikely right now. Somewhat unlikely. What's the highest wind Freeport, Bahamas will see? You'll probably get low-end tropical storm conditions at worst. Definitely tropical storm force gusts, I would imagine, though. I plan on going camping in St. Augustine, Florida, Monday the 9th through Friday the 13th. Should I still go? That's a question that we've received there. We'll take a look at the chart. You're talking about the storm being pretty close to you by that point. You'll be under at least the tropical storm watch there. I'd say it's risking it. And given the enormous moisture plume on the eastern side of the storm, it'll be a very wet affair, I can tell you that much. What can we say about 93W, because 92 already made landfall? Well, let's look at the Western Pacific again. As I mentioned earlier, we've mentioned two things during this stream. The first one is that the storm near Manila there, a depression actually, marked by the Philippines now and has been named Tonyo by Pagasa, 8 a.m. local time. Signal 1 warnings in effect for central Luzon. And also that other area of interest, which is near Palau, which is near the bottom of your screen, that is likely to move northwest and then curve into central Luzon also, and could be a significant typhoon. That's basically all we've got on the Western Pacific right now.
And Nathan, the Joint Typhoon Warning Centre has got a formation alert on 92, so their next advisory they should...
they might. No guarantee.
Yeah. But Eta, looking good, but my imagination is going to go mad, viewers, but looking at the satellite imagery on the screen, it looks like the eye is opening and closing, it's winking at us.
Don't know yet. It's hard to tell.
You have a close look at it.
It's hard to tell.
Yeah, but not a true eye, but it looks like an eye is looking at
Not
us.
a true eye. Okay. I'm skeptical. Let's say I'm skeptical.
Skeptical.
An eye or not an eye? That is the question.
There's another question there, didn't mark us, but I wanted to mention it. Where did it go? I've just lost it on my screen now. They were talking about a system striking the west coast of Florida and then moving east, I think. And that is also a possibility on the cards. But for the time being, a fairly uncertain situation for Tropical Storm Eta, especially with regards to US impacts. We're finishing up here now. We'll have more updates on this storm on our YouTube channel. Search Force 13 if you're not there already somehow. And subscribe for more updates. We'll be producing probably quite a few more updates and live events. I would imagine we'll be at least nightly at this stage whilst this storm approaches, and probably more than that eventually. So we'll have everything you need right here. For now though, we'll be finishing up, and we'll see you again soon. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.